Good evening. My name is Shelley Lewis, and I serve as president of the League of Women Voters of Geauga. On behalf of our board and the Political Action Committee of Kinston, we welcome you to our 2020 General Election Candidate Forum. Here with a special message from PAC is Kinston student Max Volrath.
Good evening. My name is Maxwell Volrath, and on behalf of the Political Actions Committee at Kinston, I'd like to thank you all for attending Candidates Night and showing your interest in politics. A principle of PAC is to educate those in our community on current political news and candidates. This has been a difficult year in every aspect of life and a huge year for political candidates. And so I would like to thank the League of Women Voters for putting on a virtual Candidates Night during this time of the COVID-19 pandemic. I would also like to thank the candidates for donating their time to discuss themselves and their ideas. This is a fundamental election, as it is an election for Congress and the President, with the census also occurring. With various state positions up for election too, this time more than ever, the American people need to get out to vote. Best said by Jackie Robinson, I've never identified myself with one party or the other in politics. I always decide my vote by taking as careful a look at the actual candidates and the issues themselves, no matter the party label. Like Mr. Robinson, do not follow blindly behind one party tonight, but listen and decide for yourself who you believe to be the better candidate. In a controversial period, we need our voices heard. The best way for us to do so is to elect those we truly believe can accomplish that task. Thank you again and enjoy the rest of your night.
Thank you, Max. A few words about candidate participation. For each race, candidates were invited using previously confirmed email addresses. Decisions not to participate are noted in red for each race. The League of Women Voters of Geauga does not support or oppose any individual candidate or party. Therefore, candidate participation in this forum should not be construed as a league endorsement of any individual's candidacy. Our format and rules for this evening. This is a forum to hear from and question the candidates. It is not a debate. We do not distinguish between incumbents and challengers. Therefore, you will not hear us use titles such as Congresswoman or Judge. We do not permit surrogates to stand in for the candidate. Candidates for each race present in alphabetical order by last name. Each candidate will have 3 minutes to present and must focus on their own qualifications and plans. The moderator then will present questions that have been gathered from the community via our website and screened by a league panel for compliance with our published criteria. Candidates have 1 minute to respond. Time limits will be strictly enforced. Candidates receive a 30-second alert during their opening remarks and a 10-second alert when responding to the community's questions. The time warnings will be visible to the candidates in the Zoom chat. The word "done" will be displayed in the Zoom chat when the time has elapsed. The moderator may, at their sole discretion, extend or shorten the questioning period. As a reminder, the League of Women Voters of Geauga is a nonpartisan political organization that encourages informed and active participation in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. The League does not support or oppose individual candidates or parties. Our moderator tonight is Dr. Robert Lee. Dr. Lee serves as Vice President of the League of Women Voters of Geauga. Dr. Lee.
Thank you, Shelley. Tonight, first on the agenda, we have issue 19, which is the Geauga Job and Family Services. And here to speak about that tax issue is Craig Swenson, who's the Executive Director for the Geauga County Job and Family Services.
First of all, I want to thank the League of Women Voters of Geauga County to have me here to speak on issue 19, which is a 0.7 mil renewal levy that's on this ballot for November 3rd. Again, this is a renewal, which is always a little bit less stressful than it is to have a new or additional levy. It is a tax that originated in the early 2000s. It is our mainstay levy. Currently, Geauga County Job and Family Services, and specifically our Social Services Division, our Children's Services Division, is supported by two levies. One which just passed this past spring, and again, this next one, which will be on the ballot again for this fall. The other one is a 0.5 mil, which was a new tax in 2015. And again, this is our renewal of our 0.7 mil, which again started back in the early 2000s, and really is our main operating levy to support our Children's Services Division. In general, for the state of Ohio, ranks as one of the least supported children's services states when it comes to state funding for children's services. And so you actually have a lot of counties throughout Ohio that are supported by tax levies. And we're very thankful that we've had the support of our Geauga County taxpayers for quite some time. And really this mainly goes to support our staffing, which responds to, on average, about 600 children's services investigations annually. And also goes to support the children that we have in our custody and that we're also caring for when we have to get involved with a family. Oftentimes these children need to be placed out in an out-of-home placement. So that can be a foster home or therapeutic foster home, a group home, a residential treatment facility, or sometimes even a hospital-oriented setting, psychiatric setting, which in those particular settings can cost up to almost $600 a day for those placements. So those are really the two main things that the levy supports when it comes to us. Again, this is not a new tax, but this 0.7 mil raises just around $2 million a year for us. And as it comes to the taxpayers, costs about $20 annually per $100,000 of tax valuation for your property. So with that being said, I'm not sure if there were any questions that were submitted prior. Happy to answer them. And if not, we just ask for your support and vote yes for issue 19.
Hey, Craig, we did not have any questions submitted for your issue, but I did have one that maybe you want to add to that, is that how has COVID-19 impacted your financial bottom line?
Absolutely. I appreciate that question. And it's a really good thing for the taxpayers to know. My staff, my social workers, and we also have a armed investigator on staff, are essential workers. And so we never shut down. We are a 24/7, 365 operation that, and we're not just your standard 8 to 4:30 county workers. So COVID-19 didn't stop us. We've had to be creative in how we have dealt with COVID-19, which include additional purchases, as you can imagine, for sanitizer, PPE, masks, just ways to keep our staff safe, our vehicles clean and safe, because obviously we have to transport children, vehicles all throughout the pandemic, go into people's homes. We have protocol for, every time, including myself, going to the building, there's protocol that we need to answer every single day to make sure. And thank God we've been able to, keep everyone safe and healthy throughout this time. I will say during the pandemic, for a period of time when everything was shut down, there was a period of time where we were wondering why we weren't, getting as many calls as we may have been expecting. but the answer is pretty simple, is when everyone's shut down and locked down in their homes, if there is abuse or neglect or other things going on, people aren't laying eyes on it. So now that the school year started up, the calls have kind of started to come in pretty quickly. And, really kids in schools are just getting accustomed to, being back in class or online. So we still don't have the eyes like we normally do on the kids. And obviously people are wearing masks, and some people are still doing schooling online. So it's still a little bit odd, but the calls have definitely picked up. And I think we're going to expect things to pick up really as things progress through the school year.
Okay.
And I will say the impact.
Your time was up on the question.
Oh, sorry.
We have a timer, so I don't have any other questions, and you were the first one to be on our program tonight, and want to thank you for attending.
Oh, well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Okay, thanks. We had scheduled the U.S. Congressman representative for the 14th District, and two people are running for this position, and it's Hillary O'Connor Murray and David P. Joyce. And neither candidate were available to do this due to scheduling conflicts. We will move to the Ohio Senate 18th District race, which includes Jerry Serino and Betsy Rader. And Mr. Serino accepted, but then canceled later on in favor of another event that he chose to attend. But tonight we will have Betsy Rader that will talk about the race.
Well, thanks so much for hosting this. I live in Russell Township, and I'm running for State Senate District 18, which is all of Portage County, a good part of Geauga County, and about half of Lake County. I have lived here for about 25 years. Our three kids went to the West Geauga Public Schools, but I was born in Appalachian, Ohio. My mom was a single mother of four, struggling to get by on low-wage jobs. And my path out of poverty was a great public education, and then being able to work my way through Ohio State University at a time when you could do that, when our state universities were much more affordable. I was able to get a scholarship to Yale Law School, and I wanted to be a lawyer because I wanted to empower myself, I wanted to empower my family, and I wanted to empower other people. And throughout my life, I've really tried to do that. I started out with a law firm, Squire Sanders, and one thing I did was represented small businesses, enforcing the antitrust laws when corporate monopolists were trying to run them out of business. I went on to run Geauga County's child advocacy program for abused and neglected children. I still represent abused and neglected children to this day. Then I went on to work in healthcare. I was an executive at a physician staffing company, and we staffed the military during the Iraq War. I started and ran that division. I went on to work at Medicare and Medicaid, and also as senior counsel at the Cleveland Clinic. Now I have my own law firm, and I'm running for the state Senate because I feel that our legislature's priorities have become twisted. Gerrymandering and pay-to-play politics mean that our legislature isn't addressing the most pressing needs of Ohio's families. We've had an unconstitutional school funding system now for over 2 decades. You know, we had the whole EdChoice voucher issue up before the legislature right as the COVID pandemic hit. And when they've come back into session, they haven't dealt with that. And they haven't dealt with education funding. Instead, they've been dealing with really, issues that do not seem as critical, like taking away home rule for plastic bags. They also have been neglecting issues of healthcare access. And we've seen during the COVID pandemic how incredibly important that is. Another issue that's been highlighted by the pandemic is the need for universal broadband. We need that now for education, for telemedicine, and so that people can work from home. If we want equality of opportunity for everybody, if we want Ohio's economy to thrive, we have to start investing in our people. We have to start investing in the basics. And only when we do that can we all rise together out of this very difficult time.
Thank you. I don't know if you read the beginning of this program, but we did have questions submitted through our website, and I have a few questions that would like to ask you to respond to.
Sure.
First one is COVID-19 has brought economic harm to many. What would you do to encourage a vibrant economy both in your district and throughout Ohio?
Well, that was kind of my intro that I had. I would start investing more in our people. You know, when I have talked to companies, especially manufacturing companies and places like Lake County, what they say is they have jobs, but they can't grow their companies because they don't have the workforce they need. They don't have the workforce that's trained. There's a lot of drug addiction issues in this state. We've got to adequately cope with the opioid crisis that's only gotten worse during the pandemic. We also have to really invest in public health and get this pandemic under control so that the jobs that we have lost in various service sectors, in tourism, in retail, in restaurants, you know, the way we get those jobs back is that we have to take this pandemic seriously and follow public health orders, wear a mask, I disagree with taking away authority from our public health director. I think Governor DeWine has done a great job.
Thank you. Second question is, how would you work to implement uniform internet access throughout your district for those who work and learn at home?
There we go. I guess I anticipated these questions. One proposal that I read about just today, State Senator Teresa Fedor is talking about legislation that would make broadband a public utility, treat it like we do electricity. It's an essential need these days, just as much as electricity or water have been historically. The other thing that we can do is have public-private partnerships. And, one thing that I've been reading about is the fact that right now we don't have like an office of broadband at the state level. And so responsibility for trying to improve access is spread out through a lot of different agencies. And it needs to be pulled together in a central location so that we can have a more coordinated effort. There's proposals like single dig rules where you need to, you can coordinate throughout the state government so that when people are digging for one purpose, you're also coordinating and making sure that you're getting the broadband in at the same time.
Thank you. The third question that we have on our list is, do you think it's important to reduce the role of money in our elections? Why or why not?
Absolutely. It's one of my core principles. I don't take corporate PAC money. Some may know I ran for office before, and I did not take any corporate PAC money at that time. I think that we have seen, for instance, in the HB6 corruption scandal, what happens with pay-to-play politics, especially with these, corporate entities that are investing in buying influence with our state legislature. We also have to get rid of dark money in politics, these organizations that do advertising and pay for direct mail where you don't even, they always have nice sounding names like, We Love America PAC, but you don't know who really is behind that advertising. We need to have have transparency. We need to get rid of that dark money. We also need better campaign finance laws in Ohio. For instance, in this election, we don't file our next disclosure until the end of October. So you're not going to know from June all the way to almost the election who has put money into these races. That is different from other jurisdictions, from other states and the federal government, and we need to change that.
Thank you. The last question I have is that what changes in Ohio policing laws would you support or oppose, and why?
I'm really happy to have a chance to talk about that. I've been endorsed by the Fraternal Order of Police of Ohio, and I've actually already had some really great conversations with the head of the Fraternal Order of Police. And, you know, I come to this from a background as a civil rights lawyer, but also as having worked at the Cleveland Clinic, which has a very large police department of its own. So I actually have a lot of experience working with police departments. One thing we've talked about, for instance, is that we need to have more transparency in the hiring process so that when police departments are hiring people, they know more about the background of the police officers they're hiring, their disciplinary histories, because, you know, police departments don't want to hire bad employees any more than anybody else does. They want to work with good people. The other thing we need to do is invest in training. And I think people might be surprised by how little police earn. And so we need to make sure that we're training and that we're recruiting the best and the brightest.
Thank you. That is the extent of our list of questions, and we do have a full agenda tonight, and want to thank you for meeting us on Zoom tonight. Ohio House 76 District. There are two people running for this office. One is Diane Grandell, and the other is Garrett Westhoven. Ms. Grandell did not respond, but tonight we do have Garrett Westhoven that is here to join us.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Garrett Westhoven, and I am the Democratic candidate for State House District 76. I'll begin by telling you a bit about myself. I'm a married father of two with a 5-year-old son, a 17-month-old daughter. I have 15 years of experience as a web developer. One of the reasons I'm running for office is to bring my technical expertise to the State House and help lead Ohio into the 21st century. Let me begin by saying I hope that none of you have lost any family or friends to the coronavirus, but if you have my heartfelt sympathy. Speaking to you via Zoom is a stark reminder of the pandemic we are living through and underscores the need to make sure that everyone has access to high-speed, affordable broadband. Whether your kids have been forced to attend school online or you are now working from home for the foreseeable future, the need for everyone to have access to high-speed, affordable connection to the internet has become critical. Building out the infrastructure necessary to handle this is something we can't wait on any longer. We need to set up a public-private partnership to ensure that everyone in Ohio has access to affordable, high-speed connection. The next part of my platform I'd like to discuss is education. In 1997, the Supreme Court of Ohio determined that the system through which we fund our public schools is unconstitutional. 20 years later, we still haven't properly addressed this. It's time for us to end the system that bases education on developmentally inappropriate tests that only reflect the income of the local community and not the skill of the teachers or the quality of the school district. Also, public funds should fund public schools, full stop. Our voucher programs siphon funds from already underfunded districts and lines the pockets of corporations who are pulling from the same pool of teachers that public schools do and are outside the same system requirements that we hold our public schools to. This underfunding has made teaching during the pandemic, which would have been challenging in the best of circumstances, even harder than it needs to be. Finally, I'd like to discuss governing philosophy. I'm here tonight because I want to represent everyone in my district and not just those from one party. I also want to make my decisions based upon the best data available. I want to make sure that I'm available to respond to the needs of my constituents. I also want to help us govern for the real world and not a cable news bubble. We're in the middle of a global pandemic. Whether it be that or the myriad of other problems facing our state, we need to legislate for that reality. We're likely to lose a congressional seat in this redistricting process because an insufficient number of people are staying and coming into our state. We need policies that encourage our children to stay here and people in industries to come here. We could choose to become a leader. We could choose to become a leader in this, or we could, continue to try the same policies that let people go away. Thank you very much for tuning in tonight. My name is Garrett Westoven, and I hope to have your vote on or before November 3rd. Thanks.
Thank you. We have several questions that were submitted to the League of Women Voters website, and we want to ask some of these questions submitted. First one, and just if you haven't saw the preamble of this, we'll ask a question and you'll have 1 minute and you'll get a pop-up just like you did to how much time you have left.
Okay.
So the first question is, COVID-19 has brought many economic harms to the state. What would you do to encourage a vibrant economy, both in your district and throughout Ohio?
To get a vibrant economy, we have to make sure that everyone is following the rules. Starting with, making sure everyone is wearing a mask. This allows, most businesses to be able to stay open and to function normally. Masks are one of the best things we can do to protect ourselves. The other thing is that we need to make sure that for something that, isn't necessarily pure commerce, like say education, our kids need to wear a mask in school, or we need to make sure that the schools have the funding they need to make sure they keep our kids and our administrators and other essential workers safe. While we do this, we can make sure that everything is being, done safely enough that our economy can get along. It's going to be challenging in the short term, but we need to make sure if everyone follows the rules, our cases can go down, and then we can consider to really start opening again. Right now, we're just sort of limping along, so we just need to make sure we continue to follow the rules, and in the long run, we'll be okay.
Okay, next question, which I think you may have addressed partial this, but if you want to expand upon this, it's a question about how would you work to implement a uniform internet access throughout your district for those who work and learn at home?
Yeah, so I touched upon this in my opening, but I think we need to create a public-private partnership. We need to treat broadband like a utility and need to make sure we build out the infrastructure to get there. This, can also help create jobs, at least in a short-term process, to get the internet and build it out everywhere we need it to go. We need to make sure that, and I think I'm particularly qualified for this because I'm a web developer. Like, I know what a real broadband connection is. A lot of people have, or a lot of companies, claim they have something that is broadband, but it's, really not sufficient for what we use the internet for today. So making sure we have a strong public-private partnership that, helps build out this infrastructure is critical for everyone in the state of Ohio.
Okay. Third question that we have, do you think it's important to reduce the role of money in our elections? Why or why not?
Yes, it is absolutely critical that we try to reduce the role of money in our elections as much as humanly possible. Unfortunately, given the current circumstance, we are working inside the framework of Citizens United. So there are some things we can do with that, and just making sure that all donated money is disclosed to anyone requiring a political group or a super PAC or anything like that. There's a law actually in Montana called the Disclose Act that makes sure that anyone who sends out any sort of political mailer or anything like that has to disclose their donors. This, at the very least, shines money on who is putting money into elections. This, only gets us part of the way there. I think the final true solution is that we need a constitutional amendment to overturn Citizens United. Like, that's what we have to push for. That's obviously a big ask, but that's the final solution to really get this where we need to go.
Thank you. The last question that we have is, what changes in Ohio's policing laws would you support or oppose and why?
So I think, we need to make sure that there's things like, we can't do no-knock warrants. That I think is a potential violation of people's rights. We need to make sure that, there is racial sensitivity training for all police officers to make sure that, to try and eliminate as much racial biases as humanly possible. We need to, those are probably two of the biggest things that, we can start to do to improve things. And more often than not, we just need to make sure that we have to start to build trust in our police force, whether you've been sexually assaulted or you're Black or brown. There's a lot of people who simply do not trust the police. And we need to change the culture of our police force to ensure that people actually trust the police. Because when people don't trust the police, that's when more crime is committed. So we just need to change our police culture to make sure that people can trust them.
Well, thank you. And that's all the questions that we have for tonight. And I want to thank you for your participation in our first ever Zoom Candidates Night. Sandra O'Brien and also Sean J. O'Brien. Miss O'Brien declined to participate, but we do have Sean J. O'Brien here tonight to participate in our program.
Well, good evening, and I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters of Geauga County for putting this on. I appreciate it. I am State Senator Sean O'Brien of the 32nd Senate District, which encompasses all of Trumbull County, all of Ashtabula County, and a sliver of Geauga County. For background, I grew up in Trumbull County my whole life. I am married to my wife, Maria, and two children, two daughters, Paige and Jillian. I went to Edinburgh University of Pennsylvania for my undergrad, and I went to the University of Akron School of Law for law school. After graduating law school, I went into the Trumbull County Prosecutor's Office, where I was an assistant county prosecutor for about 10 years. During that time, from 1998 to 2000, well, it'd be 12 years, 2010, being a prosecutor, assistant county prosecutor, I also formed the Trumbull County Foundation. From that experience, it kind of galvanized me towards getting involved in the community. And in 2009, I decided to run for the House of Representatives, the Ohio House, which I won, and I served 3 terms in the Ohio House. And then in 2016, before I was term limited, I then ran for the Senate and won in 2016. So I'm in hopefully going to be in my second term here very shortly. I'm, as I said, very committed to the community. And one of the things that I'm most proud about my experience in both the House and the Senate is my ability to work across party lines to get things done. I think that's very important, and really the only way to get things done is to work with both sides and to compromise and listen to each side, each story. One thing being a prosecutor I learned is you have to hear both sides of the story and be able to talk to a jury or a judge and to explain your position. So I took that experience with me to the House and to the Senate, and it served me well. During my time in the House, I was able to work with the Kasich administration, and currently now I've been able to work with the DeWine administration. Economic development is my #1 concern. In our district, we had the Cruise GM leave our community, and it devastated our area. But we've rebounded, and we are now working on technological and other industries that are going to help propel us into the future. And it's that type of economic development and working again across party lines that's going to help continue to help the 32nd be successful and move forward in the future.
Thank you. We have had some questions submitted to us through our Geauga League of Women Voters website, and we actually have 4 questions, and I'd like to have you give your responses to those. First one is COVID-19 has brought economic harm to many. What will you do to encourage a vibrant economy, both in your district and throughout Ohio?
Well, I think that COVID-19 has changed a lot of things in how we do business, how we go to school. It has highlighted the importance of broadband. In the 32nd district, we have many areas without broadband. So that is one thing I am working to help bring that in. We have seen shutdowns, and what we need to do is how do we respond to the pandemic by listening to the governor, to the health experts, by wearing masks and doing the appropriate things to help get us through this pandemic quicker and sooner so that we can get back to normal.
Thank you. You brushed on this a little bit. It's actually the second question is, how would you work to implement uniform internet access throughout your district for those who work and learn at home?
Well, I guess question 1 and 2 kind of go together, because we have seen, as I said, how important broadband is. Students can't get their homeworks and do online schooling in many parts of the district due to the fact that they don't have broadband. So I've been working with the House. They have House Bill 13, which is a broadband bill that we're working on right now in the Senate to help bring broadband throughout the state, especially our area, the rural areas, and emphasizing the rural areas that really need this. It depends. It greatly affects economic development because so much commerce now is on the internet, and schooling, telemedicine. It's so important to our area. That's why I am working to bring broadband to the 32nd district.
Thank you. Do you think it's important to reduce the role of money in our elections? Why or why not?
I think we definitely need to reduce the amount of money in elections. I think we need transparency, and I think we need to look no further than House Bill 6. The corruption part is just the tip of the iceberg. What created that was the lack of transparency and the dark money that was able to be funneled to the householder and his cohorts, and then to use that money for, as the U.S. Attorney General said, the largest bribery scheme in Ohio history. That only happens because we don't have appropriate laws to keep that in check. And when you follow the money, that's where you see where the issues are. So we need campaign finance reform, and we need to have accountability when it comes to campaign finance.
Thank you. The last question we have for you is, what changes in Ohio policing laws would you support or oppose, and why?
I think for Ohio, we need to do more training. And I think, people talk about funding the police. I think we should fund the police more, because when we have better training and we have better experience, and it helps the officers adapt and understand how to deal with these situations. I know as a prosecutor, you would see which officers went to training and had the OPATA training and were able to deal with certain circumstances, certain situations. By adding money and training to their curriculum, to their ability to become police officers, you're going to strengthen the pool that we're going to pull from. And I think it's going to be a lot better for our state if we do those types of things rather than talk about defunding them, because obviously we need the police. And to say we're not going to have the police or to totally defund them just does not make sense. And I don't think that's the way for Ohio or frankly across the country.
Thank you. That is the extent of our question and answer period. And we would like to thank you for participating in our Zoom candidates night. The Ohio House 99th District And we have two people running for this position, Richard Dana and Sarah Fowler Arthur. And tonight we have both candidates participating in our program. And first to speak would be Richard Dana.
Well, good evening. My name is Richard Dana, and my wife, Marianne Cezanne, and I live in Austinburg, Ohio. I am a lifelong resident of Northeast Ohio. I received my Bachelor's of Science degree at The Ohio State University and my law degree from Case Western Reserve University. My first job, in the legal field was working for the 11th Appellate District, first as a summer intern and then as a staff attorney. The judges of that court hear appeals that includes Geauga County. I have a business background as a practicing attorney for nearly the past 25 years. My wife's family owns Eddie's Grill in beautiful Geneva on the Lake of Ohio. And if I had to guess, most people probably know me from my service behind the counter, cooking delicious hot dogs and cheeseburgers and serving ice cold frothy root beer. I have served our area on numerous community boards. My service includes past board chair of the Legal Aid Society of Cleveland and the Hubbard House Underground Railroad Museum. I currently serve on the University Hospitals Board, serving as board chair at two regional hospitals, both rated 5 stars out of 5 by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services for Quality and Patient Satisfaction. In my spare time, I teach classes at Kent State University at Ashtabula in criminal justice, business law, and ethics to convey my knowledge to the next generation. It is through this work that I have become an accidental historian, and I continue to be amazed at the incredible persons, past and present, who have called Northeast Ohio home and have sought to take the promise of America, equal justice under law, so it applies to all of our citizens. It's in my work on education that I see the culture of corruption at work in Columbus that harms our children. $600 million of your tax money was squandered when Columbus decided to fund ECOT. My local school district alone lost nearly $4 million to these failed charters. I also see a college education system where the state, for my generation, permitted me to obtain a high-quality education at Ohio State with little or no debt while working part-time jobs on nights and weekends from which to make ends meet. That same education would cost the average student $100,000 today. We saddle our current generation with educational debt and then expect them to purchase a home and start a family. The priorities in Columbus must change to better reflect our values in Northeast Ohio, and that change starts with your vote. I'm endorsed by first responders such as the Fraternal Order of Police, teacher advocacy groups, the Ohio State Medical Association PAC, laborers, veterans working for Ohio, and the Farm Bureau as a friend of agriculture. I will use my experience to continue advocating for us in the areas of healthcare, education, including the need to extend broadband to our area, necessary for farming and our growing agritourism industry. I ask for your vote this November 3rd, or as the League of Women Voters will remind us when early voting starts October 6th. Thank you, and my thanks to the League for providing this forum. Thank you.
Sarah Fowler Arthur, who will now speak.
As many of you know, I'm Sarah Fowler Arthur, your current State Board of Education representative and running for state representative in the 99th District. I am a farm kid. I grew up here in Ashtabula County and Lake County with Geauga as my backyard, and I have a lot of friends there and always considered it home in a sense. Likewise, I am a small business owner and a founder of the Badger Run Berries, which is a small U-pick farm that I'm starting up in Rock Creek. I'm honored to have received the 2020 Friend of Agriculture designation from the Farm Bureau. And in my previous occupation, I worked in my parents' business doing graphic design and sales and marketing for Fowler Enterprises, Inc. as the director of marketing until getting married to my best friend, Isaac Arthur, this spring. And I now co-produce an international science channel, Science and Futurism with Isaac Arthur, which has been a great opportunity to use my skills in a new way. Like I said, I've also had the privilege of serving this community on the State Board of Education for the past 8 years. I have vice chaired 3 committees, also had the opportunity to serve as a delegate to the National Association of State Boards of Education Government Affairs Work Group, which focused on the impact of federal government regulations on the Ohio and other state school systems, and currently chair the Teaching, Leading, and Learning Committee. I've advocated strongly for local control, parental involvement, and the best education option for each student throughout my time on the board. I've also focused heavily on the need to improve our trade and job skill training opportunities for all students, which seem to be particularly limited in opportunity for our students in the urban areas. And I think that we all would agree that this crisis has highlighted the need for better infrastructure, broadband, internet access for all of our students, especially in rural areas and areas where we don't have the access has been very important. So just as students are not one size fits all, I believe that neither are other issues in state policy. And I believe we need flexibility at the local level to address those issues on a case-by-case basis. I'm proud to have the endorsement of the NFIB, Ohio Right to Life, Ohio Right to Life Action, and have an AQ rating with the NRA. Unfortunately, my opponent has an F, and I'm also very proud to have been endorsed by the Buckeye Firearms Association. Thank you very much for your support in the past, and I look forward to continuing to serve you if you choose to elect me to state representative in November.
Thank you. Both of you are online, and Sarah, we'll start with you first. We have a list of questions that were submitted to us online, and I'll have you answer this first, and then we'll move to Richard to also respond to it. First question that we have is, COVID-19 has brought economic harm to many. What will you do to encourage a vibrant economy, both in your district and throughout Ohio?
Thank you. That's an important area for all of us. I know as a small business owner and in conversations with many other small business owners, many businesses are being negatively impacted by the response to COVID-19. And we've had a lot of changes that have taken place, and we need to make sure that in our efforts to promote health and safety, that we also promote flexibility and local control so that all of our businesses have a fair opportunity to succeed. And this is also important for protecting our families at a basic level. We need to make sure that students have the infrastructure to continue with their education, that we have the opportunity for a healthy response, but at the same time, we need to make sure that everyone can move forward in a safe way. I think that it looks like my time is up, so thank you.
Thank you.
So yeah, as a small business owner, no question, we have huge issues here with COVID-19 at the Grill. We had to make determinations of how we could safely serve our customers, and we did that by limiting the times that we were open and then also encouraging social distancing. I'm going to say that we're going to need more support here at the federal and state level here for our small businesses. It always seems that when Wall Street needs a bailout, trillions of dollars, appears. But when we need small businesses that need support, it's always very difficult. And 80% of the jobs that are created in this country are still small businesses that occur here in this nation. And I was shocked at how, when that first round of PPP that went out, of how difficult it was for our small businesses from which to be able to get those loans in favor of bigger businesses. We have to place an emphasis on this country here on small business owners. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll have you start first with the next question that we have, and that would be, how would you work to implement a uniform internet access throughout your district for those who work and learn at home?
Yeah, this is another question here where having access to reliable and cost-effective broadband. It's no longer a luxury, it is a necessity. And we learn this here with respect to education, where many of our schools in the district had to go to online learning, and many of them also just did not have access to the internet. So we were sending children home here with blizzard bags from which to try to learn as if this was a snow day. We also had issues here with medicine. We've had our seniors and other persons that couldn't see their doctors. And we have this advent here of telemedicine, but that means nothing if we don't have broadband. And again, this is something that I think both the federal government and the state government are going to have to help with here. There have been initiatives that have started in the state to look at these issues, and it's sorely needed here in the 99th district. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
So I also agree that obviously broadband has been highlighted as a high area of need in the last 6 months in our district. And I'm thankful that the county commissioners in Ashtabula County already have started down this road with a feasibility study and looking at how we can make this more available at a cost-effective rate to constituents in this part of the district. Obviously, we may need to continue that in the 99th portion of Geauga County because it's an area with needs as well. And I'm not familiar with the commissioner's efforts in that area, but we do need to continue to make sure that as we move forward, there is access and that we have an opportunity for businesses and families to make the connections that they need, and that has been highlighted a lot in the last 6 months.
Thank you. The third question, and Sarah, we'll start with you, is do you think it's important to reduce the role of money in our elections? Why or why not?
That's an interesting question, and one I probably go back and forth on myself quite a bit, because we all look at the amount spent in campaigns and say, that's a lot of money. But I have a number of people who've been involved in business for many years, and they continually remind me that in the scope of our GDP, it's a very small amount. Ultimately, I'm thankful that we live in the freest country on earth that allows us to share our views with each other through a civil forum, that we have the opportunity to vote and to peaceably make sure that our differences are resolved. And I think that regardless of the amount of money that is involved, that is the core principle that we need to continue to focus on and to have as our ultimate goal. You can have very small amounts of money, as there's higher limits in the federal races than there are in state races, and we still see many issues with transparency, and we need to make sure that money is not the only thing that limits us from having a fair and free election. Thank you.
Richard?
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's gone out of control, especially with the federal system with respect to the amount of money that's involved in politics. And I think that the United States Supreme Court needs to revisit the Citizens United case. I think on the local level, I think that the money is, I think perhaps more equitable, but I have concerns, even in Ohio, with the culture of Columbus that exists down in Columbus. The opposing side here was just involved here on allegations of $60 million. $60 million that was going to be spent here in some of these House and Senate races. Now, I don't know if my opponent was going to be in line to receive those funds or not, but those have since been stopped. But I will note with my opponent that when she announced her race in early August, that she was being told that she was going to be a part of Team Householder. That's a major concern that we have here about big money coming in here from which to affect local elections. Thank you.
Thanks. And I have one more question for both of you. and Richard, we'll start with you, is what changes in Ohio policing laws would you support or oppose, and why?
Well, I want to say here, I want to talk about things that have occurred here in my area here of Ashtabula City. We had a very peaceful protest that did occur with respect to the Black Lives Movement. And we had our chief of police in the city of Ashtabula, Chief Stell, who wrote a letter in the newspaper that said, "We are with you. We are with you in the sense that we understand that there does need to be more minority hiring and that there's things that we can do from which to enhance policing." I happen to teach over at Kent State Ashtabula, and it is in the criminal justice field. And so we do talk about community policing and this idea of the police knowing their community members. So I just want to say I'm very proud of our law enforcement officers locally that have recognized that there are problems and are willing to meet with people from which to seek solutions. And I also want to talk about the NRA endorsement as well here. I am a gun owner. I'm a responsible gun owner. But I didn't agree with the NRA's stance that we shouldn't give the police a break when you stop and you have a CCW permit, that you don't inform our officers of the fact that you are armed. Let's give our cops a break. Thank you.
Sarah?
Thank you. I have many friends in law enforcement and have had the opportunity to discuss with them some of the recent proposals over the summer of the governor and of other groups in Columbus that are pushing for a variety of reforms to our policing laws. I think that probably the most valuable in the eyes of the law enforcement that I've spoken with is the mental health training and being trained more thoroughly how to de-escalate situations. However, many of them also felt that they do have a lot of tools at their disposal that maybe they just need to utilize more frequently. So I think that ultimately we need to focus on encouraging our police officers to do the best job that they can, supporting their families, and recognizing that all of us have areas that we need to improve in, but it's a continuous improvement cycle, just as it is in education. It's not something that you can click your fingers and instantly be a perfect at. So I would support things that encourage our police to do the best job that they can.
Thank you. That is the last question that we have concerning this state race, and we want to thank you both for participating in tonight's candidates night. The judge for the appellate court, the 11th district, and two candidates are running for this position, Sarah Thomas-Cavor and Cynthia Westcott Rice. So first, we'd like to turn it over to Sarah Thomas-Cavor.
I'm Sarah Thomas-Cavor, and I'm running for the 11th District Court of Appeals. I am your conservative candidate for judge. I hope you look at my record, 22 years of legal experience, both as a state prosecutor and defense attorney. I've done defense in federal cases. I have a broad and in-depth experience in civil litigation, including family law, and almost every other conceivable kind of case that could come before the 11th District Court of Appeals. I've practiced in and outside of the state of Ohio, including Pennsylvania and Chicago. I have had landmark cases in and outside of Chicago, and I have tried cases from capital cases as both a prosecutor, felony prosecutor from Trumbull County, and defense attorney, to juvenile and traffic cases. I have done a wide array of civil rights cases, which I'm very proud of, because those are the cases that I have had the most recognition. I hope to bring a very intellectual approach to the bench, where I would have the highest quality of opinions based on the Constitution as written. I have a judicial philosophy which is different from my opponent that I think would benefit the Court of Appeals. So I would like the voters again to remember that I'm the conservative candidate for Judge, 11th District Court of Appeals, Sarah Thomas-Cavor. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will have Cynthia Westcott Bryce.
I'm Judge Cynthia Rice. It's been an honor and a privilege serving as your judge on the 11th District Court of Appeals for the past 18 years. I'm running for re-election to my seat for my 4th term. I've been a visiting judge on the Ohio Supreme Court and also a visiting judge in other districts throughout Ohio, including the 2nd, the 7th, and the 9th District Court of Appeals. A lot of people don't understand what we do at the Court of Appeals. You think about a trial court when you think about a court, but the Court of Appeals is a little different than the trial court in that we do not have juries, we do not have witnesses testify. We have attorneys who appear before us and they argue the law and why they feel that there was error committed in the trial court. So all of the courts throughout the 5 counties in this district, including not only Geauga, but Ashtabula, Lake, Portage, and Trumbull County. I'm sorry?
No, you're.
Is it all right? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. So anyway, so what we do is we review the case based upon the transcript and the record before the court, and we apply the law to it, determine whether or not there was error committed in the lower court. And that is why the reason the Bar Association polls are so important in this race. The only people who appear before us are the attorneys, so they know who the judges are and who the good judges are. I'm very proud to have been highly recommended by the Lake County Bar Association, and I am the preferred candidate overwhelmingly with 88% of the vote in Trumbull County, and Geauga County should have their bar poll results out soon. But the attorneys, their job, they feel that they have a responsibility to the voters to let voters know who the good judges are. So I'm proud to have their recommendation before the voters. But before I took the bench, I was a state and federal prosecutor. I was the Assistant United States Attorney in Youngstown, where I tried all federal crimes throughout the Northern District of Ohio, in Cleveland, Akron, and the Youngstown courts. And I tried general crimes, federal bank robberies, gang cases, gang violence, drug and gun violations throughout those districts. And when I was with the Trumbull County Prosecutor's Office, I was the first assistant, where I tried capital murder, rape, all major felonies. And that is where I really learned how to be an attorney, how to try cases, and how to recognize what people are going through when they come before the courts. And I'm very proud to say that the Cleveland Plain Dealer has endorsed me. They based that endorsement on the fact that I have decided thousands of appeals, and they said that based upon my experience and reputations, voters should re-elect me. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for having this event tonight. And for more information, you can go to votejudgerice.com to learn more about me. Thank you so much.
Thank you. For both of you, we've had questions submitted to us online through the League of Women Voters website, and actually have 4 questions. And with Cynthia Rice first, I'll have you start, and then I will switch to the other person. So the first question that we have is, what obstacles, if any, do you see achieving equal justice? What changes to the judicial system would you advocate for, and why?
Well, one of the biggest obstacles to access to justice through the courts is the money. I mean, people don't have the funds that they require to bring a case before the courts. And what we have done at the Court of Appeals is we work very closely with pro se litigants so that they can have their case heard to the court, whether they can go online and look at our sample briefs so they understand what we need to hear from them about so that they can get their case heard. And with the new COVID changes that we've made with Zoom hearings, they can appear before the court no matter where they are with really no expense. So I think that's the biggest obstacle to justice. It's financial limitations.
Thank you. Now we would like to go over to Sarah Thomas Cavort.
Yeah, my practice has been not just in criminal law, state and federal, but also, like I said, civil rights violations, family law, and torts. And especially in those areas, besides where you're given an attorney, even if you're indigent, and I have done many indigent cases where people could not afford an attorney. In the other civil litigations, money is a big issue, but I also think that they have to, any litigant has to feel that they are fairly heard by an impartial court. And that takes a lot of education to the public, outreach to the public, and although as a reviewing court you're deferential to the trial courts, I think that there's something that I could bring to the bench, which is the sides of a practice in criminal law, defense as well as prosecution, and also have actually had trials, custody trials, divorce, 1983 civil rights actions trials, and I've actually litigated in that broad depth and breadth of practice. And I think I would have a better balance and when I'm reviewing cases, because I've been a litigator advocating for people in a custody trial, in a divorce trial, where they're—
Okay, your time is up. I may have to interject. We'll start with you, Sarah, for this next question is, which areas of law have you practiced in, and to what extent? What aspect of this position presents the greatest challenge to you?
I think I did just mention the types. I will tell you what depths. I have had landmark cases in prisoners' rights. For example, a case in the in front of Judge Posner in Chicago, where I actually had argued against the state of Illinois in how the grievance procedures worked, and the precedent was changed, and this was precedent set by Judge Posner and his panel, and that panel heard my case and amended the previous decision. That impacts all the prisoners in this country, and it's good law. So that's the most impactful case I've had. I've had municipal liability in Cleveland against the Greater Cleveland RTA. I've had family law cases where right to counsel in Trumbull County was the court found it.
I'm going to interject. Each time we have 1 minute for a response. And so I don't know if your chat is popping up or not. That kind of gives you a notice. So if you could kind of keep an eye on that as we go through this. So we go over to Cynthia next to also respond to this question.
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yes.
I think it was two.
Yeah. Which areas of law have you practiced in, and to what extent? And what aspect of this position presents the greatest challenge to you?
I've practiced, before I became a prosecutor, I practiced in a family law firm, and we practiced general law. So I handled domestic cases, contracts cases, probate matters, just all kinds of general practice of law. And then I became a prosecutor, and for 12 years, I handled extensive prosecution of major felonies throughout the Northern District of Ohio and Trumbull County. The biggest challenge to this thing, I think the hardest thing is the cases that come before me that are troubling, and those are the cases of terminating parental rights, parents who are losing their children. So that's very disturbing, that we have to decide cases and take children away from their parents. Those are complicated cases, they're fact heavy, and it's a very sad event. So that is the hardest, challenging event, case that we hear, I think, in our court, because I take it personally that it's just a difficult time.
Thank you. The next question, we'll continue with you, is what accomplishment are you most proud of, both professionally and personally?
I would say the biggest accomplishment is, well, next year I will be the chief judge of the Court of Appeals Judges Association. So I've essentially gone up the ranks and become the chief of all the Court of Appeals judges in the state of Ohio. And I also sit on the Ohio Judicial Conference. I'm the co-chair of the Criminal Law and Procedure Committee, where we've reviewed legislation on all matters that are criminal in nature. And we make recommendations to the legislature about changes that we think should be happening to the law, or any suggestions that they have proposed bills. We make recommendations, give statements to them about what we think needs changed, what could be improved, just to make sure we get the best law in the state of Ohio. And I think that I'm most proud of, because I am a leader throughout the judiciary in the state of Ohio, and I do more than just my job in deciding cases. So I'm very proud of that, and that's a big accomplishment.
Thank you. Anyway, we move to Sarah.
For me, my biggest accomplishment is my 3 children. I went to law school as a second career. I was teaching at Case Western Reserve University. I have always worked and raised my children. However, during the times that were young, it was difficult. My husband at the time was chief resident at Metro Health. Despite two children follow my footsteps and become federal prosecutor, one in Cleveland and one in Wisconsin. My 3rd child is a venture capitalist. They've all done quite well, and they're nice people and they treat people well. So that is my biggest accomplishment. In terms of my legal career, it's my cases of first impression, where I've litigated cases regarding, for example, sexual harassment, municipal liability, prisoners' rights. It's family law litigation in terms of parental rights. I've actually advocated families in crisis and secure their rights. First Amendment cases, Second Amendment cases, Fourth Amendment cases, and I've been a.
So your time is up. We have one more question, and we'll have you lead off with this, is that who are your judicial role models and why?
Starting with
Sarah, yes, you.
I currently on the court, I would say Neil Gorsuch, although we haven't seen as many opinions from him as I would have liked to make that kind of basis. I feel like he's an independent jurist. He's conservative, he has a libertarian bent, but he is independent, and he's not a partisan individual, and I like that. In terms of who I would idolize, I would say Thurgood Marshall. He was an advocate, a staunch advocate, civil rights leader, and when he got onto the bench, he was a fine and intellectual jurist. So those would be my 2 answers.
Thank you. And Cynthia, would you like me to repeat the question, or?
Your question is, who are my judicial role models? And I don't know if we're looking at Supreme Court justices. I know that as a young girl, I saw Sandra Day O'Connor become the first woman on the Supreme Court. And I think that inspired me from a very young age, recognizing that women can have leadership roles in the judiciary, in life. And I think that she was always someone that I looked up to. Of course, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, just because of her commitment to what she believed in and her fight for what she believed in. I just think that as a judge, you need to be committed, but also dedicated to what we do. So I think those are, and I guess it's just because they're the early women that were on the bench, and those are my role models.
Thank you. That concludes our question and answer period, and would like to thank you on behalf of the League of Women Voters for your participation in our first ever candidates night via Zoom. Two candidates running for this position, Timothy Cannon and Matt Lynch. And Matt Lynch, we're expecting him, but he is not online, but we can first start with Timothy Cannon.
Thanks to the League of Women Voters. My name is Tim Cannon. I'm currently the presiding judge of the 11th District Court of Appeals. I'm just starting my 14th year there. Prior to that, I practiced law in Lake and Geauga County for 27 years. Now, this is a strange election, as you all know, in many ways, and I don't think there's any race more strange than this particular one. And the reason is because my opponent is already a judge on our court. He's been there for a little more than a year and a half, and what he's said is that he's too old to run for his seat again, and this would be the last chance for him to run and get an extra 2 years toward retirement. So, but the reason that's confusing and meaningful is if he were to win, I would be out and someone would be then appointed to his seat. So the real choice is between me and whoever this unknown person would be to get appointed to his seat. We don't get a lot of fanfare at the Court of Appeals, so you may not know us that well. I would point you to two independent sources to decide who you think the better candidate is here. The Cleveland Plain Dealer did an extensive endorsement process. You can watch it on cleveland.com. The interview itself was over an hour long. And I received one of the strongest endorsements that in my 40-year legal career I ever remember seeing for a judge or judicial candidate. And the other source is the bar associations. We have 5 counties in this district, and 4 of the bar associations do judicial polls. They don't do these polls for the attorneys, and they don't do them for the judges or the candidates. They do them to educate the voters about who they believe the attorneys do a good job as a judge. And in Lake County, that poll, I was highly recommended. In Portage County, I was also highly recommended. My opponent was not recommended by the Portage County Bar. In Trumbull County, they do a preference poll, and I was the preferred candidate by a vote of 101 to 19. And the Geauga County Bar Association poll is, I think, due out within the next day or so. My work's been recognized by the Ohio Supreme Court. I'm the only judge in Ohio of the 68 appellate judges. When a Supreme Court judge has to recuse himself, the Chief Justice appoints an appellate judge to sit in their stead. And I'm the only appellate judge that's been appointed by 3 different Chief Justices, 2 Republicans and 1 Democrat, to sit on the Ohio Supreme Court. I've received many endorsements. I would just direct you to the website, reelectjudgecannon.com, and I appreciate your vote in November. Thank you.
Thank you. I do not have Matt Lynch signing in, so at this point, I'd like to go through the questions, and some of them you started to address already, but we did have 4 questions submitted through the League of Women Voters website of people that had interest in these positions and had questions. So the first question that I have for you is, just as you start to touch on, this race presents a unique situation. If Mr. Lynch prevails, a vacancy will be created on the court that Governor DeWine will fill. Does this effectively take away voters' rights to elect their judges?
Well, I don't think it effectively takes it away, quite frankly, but it does create significant confusion. It would appear as though the choice in the race is between Matt Lynch and Tim Cannon, but that's not the reality. If I were to be successful in this election, nothing at all would change on the court. But if Matt Lynch were to win, he wouldn't his seat would be vacant, and the voters, I guess in this respect, the voters wouldn't have any say in who got appointed to basically take my place.
Thank you. Second question is, which areas of law have you practiced in and to what extent? And what aspect of this position presents the greatest challenge to you?
Well, as I said, prior to becoming judge, I practiced law for 27 years. And I think one of the things that prepared me the most for the position was the fact that I had a very broad-based practice. I started out as a young lawyer doing some criminal work. I became a city prosecutor. I was the city prosecutor in the city of Painesville for many years. From there, I went on and began to do more significant civil work and more important civil work. I was in federal courts and handled many different civil cases, including representation of the Regional Transit Authority in Lake County and several communities as their legal advisor. So it was a very broad-based preparation for the position. The most significant challenges with regard to the position are really just staying on top of the current changes in the laws that come. I see my time's up.
Thank you for keeping an eye on that.
Yeah.
The third question is, what obstacles, if any, do you see in achieving equal justice? What changes to the judicial system would you advocate for and why?
The question was a question equal justice or access to justice? Or?
Achieving equal justice.
Well, I think achieving equal justice is primarily driven by a person's income status and their asset status. People that don't have the ability to pay for an attorney or know how to handle a civil case really are limited in their ability to access the civil courts. In the criminal courts, defendants are entitled to public defenders if they can't afford an attorney, but they don't get to choose who their attorney is. The court appoints an attorney for them. And the equality of justice is driven more by the economic inequalities than anything.
Thank you. The last question is, who are your judicial role models and why?
That's a great question. One of the fellows I've always looked up to when I was an attorney, I did a lot of litigation, and litigation leads to appeals in the Court of Appeals. And Don Ford was the dean of the appellate bench in this district for a long time. And I knew darn well when I went in to argue a case that Judge Ford had read everything and was prepared and was thoroughly knowledgeable in the law. And I try to pattern myself after him. I always knew Judge Ford put in the work because he was very familiar with the case that I was arguing before him. And the other judge, I tell you, I've been very impressed. I got a chance to meet Chief Justice Roberts, and I'm very impressed by him, and I'm impressed by the comment that he made that, nobody ever goes to the ball game to see the umpire, and that's what we are. We're umpires. We're just calling it as we see them.
Thank you very much. And just want to have a notice that as indicated on the slide, there is going to be a rebroadcast of this event through the Geauga League of Women Voters, as you can see, and also on GTV via Spectrum, that they will also be replaying tonight's candidates night. Then the next thing for those who are on site is to Also reference some of the other valuable things as we go through the selection process, as the voter guides. Vote for 11 is an opportunity for registering to vote, update registrations. The voters in Geauga County should have all received their printed voter guide that have the responses from all the candidates. And this is something that has been valuable, that has been produced here in Geauga County for many years. And for the judicial candidates, you can also go to the judicialvotescount.com, and that is another reference for people that have interest in the judicial candidates. So this concludes our Geauga County Candidates Night for 2020 general election. I want to take this opportunity to thank the candidates who participated tonight. The coronavirus has temporarily changed our world, and it takes courage and passion for our candidates to step out of their traditional campaign box and to speak to the Geauga County voters via Zoom format. The challenges of public office has also become a bit more complicated as a result of social media. So again, I want to thank each and every one of you for your desire and willingness either to enter and or to serve in the public arena. Special thanks goes to the Geauga County League of Women Voters and the Kenston Schools Student Political Action Committee. Individuals in both groups voted many hours of their time to make this event happen. The Geauga League of Women Voters are going to continue to remain equally passionate about increasing voter participation and creating more informed citizens. Thank you again for participating, and best wishes.